Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA stories. In our first story, OP goes nuclear on an HOA after they put a lien on his house over fees that he had already paid. And after that, an HOA Karen built a pool on OP's land without his permission. Let's dive right into the video. So, am I the a-hole for going nuclear on my HOA after they put a lien on my house over fees I had already paid? So this whole mess started when my wife and I bought our dream home 6 months ago in what seemed like a lovely planned community. The house was perfect, 4 bedrooms, a finished basement, and a beautiful backyard where I could finally build the garden I had always wanted. The HOA fees seemed reasonable for what they provided, a community pool, landscaping, etc., and our realtor assured us everything would be handled smoothly during closing. Well, oh boy, was that wrong. The first sign of trouble already came about 2 weeks after we moved in. I got a letter in the mail stating that we owed $475 in HOA fees plus a $200 late fee. I was confused because I knew that we had paid all our fees during closing. I called the HOA office that afternoon and said, "Hi, I'm calling about a letter I received about unpaid HOA fees." "Well, we just moved in 2 weeks ago." "Name and address?" the woman asked, sounding bored. I provided the information. "Yes, you have not paid your fees since moving in." "But we paid everything during closing," I explained. "I have the documentation right here." "Sir, we have no record of that payment. You will need to pay the full amount plus late fees within 30 days, or we will be forced to place a lien on your property." I took a deep breath. "Could you please check again? I can email you the proof of payment from the escrow." "Email it if you want, but until we process it, you still owe the fees." I hung up and immediately emailed copies of all our closing documents showing the HOA fees had been paid. No response though. A week later, another letter arrived, and this time threatening legal action if we did not pay $725, $475 plus an additional $250 late fee within 14 days. I tried calling again, and well, this time, "HOA office, this is Karen." "Hi Karen, I'm calling about..." "Oh, you're the new owner on Maple Drive. Listen, we still have not received your payment." "Did you get my email with the proof of payment from escrow?" "We are very busy here. It takes time to process these things." I was getting frustrated. "It's been a week. How long does it take to take a look at a document showing that you've been paid?" "Sir, there's no need to get hostile. If you have an issue, you can file a formal complaint and the board will review it at the next month meeting." Well, this went on for another 2 weeks. Of course, more threatening letters, more calls where I got nowhere. Finally, I contacted the company. The woman there, Sarah, was incredibly helpful. "Let me look into this right away," she said. After a few minutes of typing, she came back with, "Oh yes, I see the problem. The HOA never processed the payment we sent them. It's been sitting in their account this whole time. I will contact them directly." 2 days later, Sarah called me back. "They are claiming that they never received our paperwork for the change of ownership, which is why the payment was not processed. But I have confirmation that they received everything. I'm sending it all again, but with tracking now." The next day, another letter came from the HOA, this one stating that they were moving forward with placing a lien on our house for now $975 in fees and penalties. Honestly, I lost it. I called our real estate attorney. My attorney Mike was appropriately outraged when I explained the situation. And by the way, Ripestars, just in case you're wondering, I anonymized all the names in the story so OP does not get doxxed. Because for some reason, he always wrote the names with first and last name. And that, to be honest, is a little bit too much private information for the internet if you ask me. "They cannot do this," he said, flipping through the documents I brought to his office. "I'm looking at proof of payment right here. This is either gross incompetence or deliberate harassment." "What can we do?" I asked. "First, I'm gonna send them a strongly worded letter. Then I'm gonna start digging. Something is not right here." Mike was not kidding about digging. Over the next week, he uncovered some interesting information. So it turns out our HOA had a pattern of losing paperwork for new homeowners and charging excessive late fees. They had been sued twice in the past year alone, but most people just paid up rather than fight. The letter from Mike seemed to finally get their attention. The HOA president, Barbara Wilson, called me personally. "Mr. Johnson," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, "I understand there's been some confusion about your fees." "No confusion," I replied. "We paid them." "You received them and now you're threatening us with a lien." Well, she huffed, if you had just come to a board meeting to discuss this, I tried 3 times. Your office said I had to wait for the next month's meeting. Nevertheless, she continued as if I had not spoken, we are willing to waive the late fees if you pay the original amount again. I actually laughed. Miss Wilson, I have proof the payment was made and received. I will not pay twice. Then I'm afraid we will have no choice but to proceed with the lien. Well, that's when I decided to go nuclear. Mike had discovered that our state required HOAs to maintain certain records and make them available to homeowners upon request. So I submitted a formal request for all financial records for the past 3 years, minutes from every board meeting, all complaints filed by homeowners, and complete documentation of every lien filed by them. And of course, records of all fees collected, including late fees. Barbara called again the next day, sounding considerably less sweet. These records will take time to compile. There will be copying fees. Well, that's fine, I said. I will also need to see the HOA's document retention policy and proof that you've been following state regulations about record keeping. Silence on the other end. Then, perhaps we should discuss this in person. The meeting was set for the following Monday, and I brought Mike with me. Barbara brought the HOA's lawyer, a nervous-looking man named Ted. As soon as we sat down, Ted spoke up. We have reviewed your case and found that there was indeed an oversight in processing your payment. We'll be withdrawing the lien threat immediately. Great, I said. And the document request? Barbara shifted uncomfortably. Is that really necessary now? We have resolved the issue. Mike leaned forward. My client has a right to review those documents. Unless there's some reason you don't want us to see them. That is when things got interesting. Ted whispered something to Barbara, who turned pale, and after some back and forth they agreed to provide the records within 30 days, as required by law. But something about their reaction made me suspicious. So I started talking to my neighbors, and that is when the real story emerged. Oh yeah, they did the same thing to us, said Tom from across the street. They claimed they never got our paperwork, charged us $800 in late fees. We just paid it to avoid the hassle. Sarah next door had a similar story. They said our check was lost and charged us double plus late fees. When I argued, they threatened to put a lien on our house. By the time the records arrived, I had collected statements from 15 different homeowners who had similar experiences in the past year alone. The records themselves were revealing. Mike called me into his office to go through them. This is worse than I thought, he said, spreading papers across his desk. So basically, they've been double charging new homeowners systematically. The lost paperwork always seems to happen to new residents. And look at this, they've collected over $50,000 in late fees just this year. Is that illegal? I asked. The double charging? Absolutely. The selective enforcement and excessive late fees? Also illegal. But here's where they really messed up. He pointed to a series of bank statements. They've been depositing these extra payments into a separate account, not the HOA's main operating account. And guess who has signing authority on that account? Barbara? Barbara and Karen from the office, not the HOA treasurer, not the board members, just them. So we filed complaints with both the State Attorney General's office and the FBI's white-collar crime division. Then we called an emergency HOA meeting. The community center was packed that night, and Barbara looked nervous as Mike laid out everything we had found. The other board members looked shocked. Apparently, they had no idea this was happening. This is ridiculous, Barbara shouted. We have done nothing wrong. That is when Tom stood up and said, You charged me $800 in late fees for payments you had already received. And me, called Sarah. More voices joined in, each with their own story, and the meeting descended into chaos. Barbara tried to adjourn it, but the other board members voted to continue. By the end of the night, Barbara and Karen had been removed from their positions and a forensic audit was ordered. The aftermath was spectacular. The audit revealed that Barbara and Karen had stolen over $200,000 over the past 3 years through their double charging scheme. They were arrested 2 weeks later. Well, it turned out they'd been targeting new homeowners because they figured we would not know enough about the HOA's procedures to fight back. The HOA has been completely restructured now. We have a new board, new management company, and new policies requiring multiple signatures on all accounts. Every homeowner who was double charged got their money back plus interest, and as for me, I'm on the board now myself, heading up the oversight committee. My wife thinks it's hilarious. I went from fighting the HOA to helping run it. However, here is where I might be the a-hole. I did not stop at just fixing our situation. I pushed for criminal charges, insisted on the forensic audit, and made sure that every single homeowner knew exactly what Barbara and Karen had done. Some people in the neighborhood think I went too far, that I could have just gotten my money back and left it at that. They say I have destroyed lives because Barbara and Karen are facing serious prison time. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for going nuclear on my HOA? And yeah, Ripestars, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Do you think OP went too far, or did he do the right thing? And I gotta say, usually I don't like that phrase, but I think here it is appropriate. If you do the HOA crime, then you should also do the time. Honestly, more HOAs need to face consequences for what they do, so I instead applaud OP for what he has done. Either way, furthermore, OP answers some questions in the comments and he said, yes, Barbara and Karen are actually facing criminal charges. The trial is next month. And yes, I'm planning to stay on the board. Someone has to watch out for this kind of stuff. Added number 2 for those asking, Barbara and Karen were both sentenced yesterday. Barbara got 5 years and Karen got 3 plus probation. They also have to pay restitution to all affected homeowners. And now some comments from Reddit. Not the a-hole, they were literally stealing from people. You did not destroy their lives, they did it themselves when they decided to commit fraud. Not the a-hole 1,000 times. As someone who works in real estate, HOA fraud is way more common than people think. You probably saved future homeowners from being victimized too. Another comment said, not the a-hole, destroying lives would have been letting them continue to steal from hardworking people who just wanna own their own homes. You're a hero. And another comment said, absolutely not the a-hole, they were running a criminal enterprise and got caught. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And now let's move on to the title story, where a ridiculous HOA Karen built a pool on OP's property and then demanded that he sells his own land. So I share my backyard's fence with my neighbors and of course the one directly behind me, I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I think you guys can figure it out, has recently caused a problem for me. We will call her Karen for privacy reasons. But first, for some context, I had been in the hospital for 3 months before I was able to come back to my house. I won't go into details as it is not the focus of the story and it's quite personal to me, but basically I discovered that there was cancer in one of my limbs. I got it treated when I first discovered it around 2 years ago, but recently it has flared up again and caused me a string of health problems, including a lingering cough. So I absolutely hate everything about it, and it's resulted in me spending large amounts of time in the hospital in the past 2 years. Well, anyway, recently I've had to stay there for those 3 months I mentioned to focus on some physical therapy, chemotherapy, and just overall to monitor my health. I was let out once the 3 months were up and recently came back to my house. I was so unbelievably stressed during this time period and being in the hospital was not much help. Also, the hospital food is terrible and being there just reminded me of all my health problems. I was really eager to get home, you know. But when I came home, I was met with another unpleasant surprise. When I came back, I immediately noticed that the fence was pushed up several feet into my backyard. I have a pretty big backyard and I don't have a lot of things out there, so it was noticeable. It's not like seeing someone for months and automatically noticing all the changes to them when you see them again. I thought I was tripping out for a while because I had not been home and maybe it was not as big as I thought it was. But I quickly concluded that I was not going crazy, I was honestly exhausted having just returned from the hospital, so I slept it off for a day before deciding to ask around about what might have happened. The next day I talked to my next door neighbor. We caught up for a bit before I finally told her about the fence situation and asked if she might have known something about why the fence was moved up. My neighbor admitted that she heard a lot of construction going on in Karen's backyard during the months I was gone and heard a lot of splashing coming from Karen's backyard, so she assumed that Karen might have built a pool. Again, we have pretty big backyards, so I was not sure why Karen would need to expand into my yard. I was hesitant in being confrontational and usually I'm a very calm and collected person, but this move of Karen's took away a noticeable chunk of my backyard and Karen had not even gotten my approval for this. So I was both confused and pissed off. After the talk with my neighbor, I decided to go talk to Karen. I knocked on her door and when she opened it, I immediately recognized her as the HOA president. I know there are a bunch of horror stories concerning the HOA, but I joined because the one in my neighborhood seemed alright as far as I'd heard when I first moved in, and I like to reap the benefits of being in one. Anyways, I introduced myself as the neighbor with whom she shares her fence with from the other side, and then quickly explained that I noticed the fence was pushed up into my yard, asking her why that might have happened. She admitted that she built a pool and expanded just a tad into my backyard. When I asked why, she said it was so that she could have more space to walk as well as have a pool. I said that she should have consulted me before making a move such as that, and that it was both illegal and disrespectful to build into my property the way she did. Karen scoffed and stammered that she tried to contact me, but that I was not home and the neighbors told her that I was in the hospital. Well, it was true that I was not at home, obviously, because I had my hospital stay, but it was not like there wasn't anyone in my house at all. While I was gone, I had my friend watch the house. They basically moved in briefly for the 3 months I was gone. They worked from home too and only go out on weekends or to the gym. So if Karen had actually put in an effort to try to speak to me or someone else about the house, she would have definitely encountered my friend. I pointed this out and she insisted that she did not see anyone home. Either way, I kept arguing with her that it was rude to take advantage of my hospital stay to expand into my property and build a pool without my permission. At this point, she started speaking over me. Actually, she was yelling over me. It was obvious that she was wrong, but she was refusing to admit it, so she was just yelling at me even though I was speaking to her in a calm tone. She also tried flaunting her status as HOA president on me, implying that because she was the leader of the homeowner association and, in her words, helped so many people, that she had the right to do whatever she wanted. Well, obviously none of that was true or legal, and eventually she just stopped me in the middle of my argument and offered me a so-called peace offering. I decided to hear her out even though I was absolutely fuming. She said that because what's done is done and that we couldn't change the past, she demanded that I would sell her the piece of land she essentially illegally annexed for a meager $4,000. She insisted that she was already using the land anyway, so I had no choice according to her. I refused. The thing that was upsetting me was the principle of the matter, where Karen took my property without consulting me and decided that she wanted to pay for it now instead of just asking me about it first or waiting for me to come back from the hospital. Surely she was not that desperate for a pool, right? Well, anyways, now that she had already built the pool, I did not want to be a pushover and give her the property just because she decided to take it from me. I left soon after and mulled over what to do. I decided that I would take the legal route. It was a calculated risk since I also do have my medical bills to pay for, but I was sure that there was no way in hell that Karen could have won this. Besides, if I pursued a lawsuit, I would get a lot more money than what Karen was offering for that land. It had been between this and reporting the incident to the police. I ultimately decided against reporting the incident to the police because, well, honestly, it didn't seem like there was anything the police could do since Karen had already built the pool. If I had called them while she was in the process of constructing it, they might have been able to help, but clearly I had discovered this mess too late. So I would have to approach an attorney. I took photos of the backyard fence, trying to show how it obviously shifted. Well, luckily, I managed to find a photo that I took with my friends a while back when I had a barbecue that showed the fence before Karen moved it. I also approached my neighbors asking if they could provide statements should I take the case to court. They agreed, and with all that in mind I approached a local attorney. Furthermore, I of course had documents to prove that Karen was full of it, papers that showed where my actual property lines were. I explained the situation to the attorney and he agreed that I could easily win if I decided to take legal action. Of course, I decided to do it. The day Karen was served the lawsuit, she came pounding on my door screaming for an explanation. She said that I had no reason to sue her and that she had offered me a good peace offering. She tried bribing me by upping the price, but I cut her off and said that it didn't matter how much money she gave me. The point was that she had completely disregarded me when she decided to build her pool and that I would be taking legal action to get what was rightfully mine back. She called me a dramatic a-hole, among other things that I probably should not repeat. When we went to court, my neighbors and the friend who housed said testified against Karen. Obviously, I cannot go into too many details for legal and privacy reasons, but I'll go over some of the general stuff they said. My neighbors said that construction started around 2 weeks after I left. My friend for one pointed out that they had never seen Karen before and that she had never come to the house during the first 2 weeks I had originally been gone. Karen's lawyer tried to argue that my friend might have coincidentally been gone while Karen came. However, we reviewed the security camera footage from my front door and it showed that Karen never showed up there. What really landed the final blow for Karen, however, was when the judge asked her to provide a permit for the construction of her pool on my property. And well, she got flustered and said that she didn't have it with her. The judge told her to produce one the next time we met. When we reconvened and the judge asked her again, Karen gave the judge a document. The judge looked at it and said that it had been clearly forged. Obviously, that is obstruction of justice. Karen was forced to admit that she had no permit and that she had hired a friend to do the construction for her illegally. That pushed the judge in my favor and I won the case pretty easily. The judge ordered Karen's pool to be shut down and demolished and for the original property line to be reinstated. Karen ended up behind bars for her crimes and I also got a decent sum of money, so that was great. I used a good portion to pay my attorney, but the other part will go to chipping my medical bills. Soon after, Karen's pool was demolished, much to her dismay, and re-established the property line. They also fixed the portion of my backyard that Karen had replaced with tiles for her pool, refilling the area with concrete. I could have kept the tiles, but I think that would have made everything look really weird and unmatching, so I decided to just use concrete again. The HOA also caught wind of the situation, and one of the board members visited my house and I explained to her what happened. She apologized on behalf of the association for Karen's actions. She let me know that Karen was fired for her behavior and that they were intolerable of actions such as hers. It is rare that you see an HOA take accountability and action for anything, but I'm glad that mine is reliable. I'm glad this mess with Karen is over, but to end this on a happy note, I'm starting to feel a lot better now that I've gotten my cancer dealt with and everything is settled, so honestly, it's only up from here. And yeah guys, before I let you go, we will read one last story from r/malicious compliance that you don't want to miss. It is titled, "Wanna create a problem from something meaningless? Have fun with minimum cursor speed." So I, 24 female, work as a cashier until the end of December to cover the needs of a certain store on Christmas sales. That said, I'm not that worried about keeping the job or having the best relationship with people that are inconvenient. For context, our manager has seemed to be acting quite targeting against me and another specific coworker since I joined a few months ago, accusing me of being the reason of divergence in money for change or saying that I broke electronic items I have not even touched. Most of the time I've left her talking to herself or ignored the situation, and sometimes we even had a few fights when limits were passed. Well, in the last of those fights, she created a problem over me changing the configuration of the computer I used the entire day to have a faster cursor speed for more agility and comfort, which then again takes around 5 seconds to change to their default. She called me to talk and said that I've been creating issues with the team by changing it, causing others that use the computer for an hour during my lunch break does not like such a fast DPI on their cursor, which has led to having complaints. Well, I gotta admit, I have no patience for that, called her childish and showed how quickly and easily you could change stuff in an ironic way, but as I turned my back she said, "Well then change it to be slow again anytime you leave." And that in return activated the malicious compliance inside of me. So anytime I go for lunch, breaks or leaving my shift, I make sure to pop the sensitivity of the mouse to the lowest possible, both on the mouse itself and in Windows, to see her painfully slowly changing it back to normal while having a client ready to pay for their items. She has not talked to me over it since then, but I can feel the hatred glances that she gives me when dealing with that. And yeah guys, I gotta say that is actually a fantastic malicious compliance for a workplace. Either way, if you enjoyed the stories, please don't forget to post some star emojis, and I will see you again tomorrow.